Good morning. Chapter 13, Lesson 1 is on page 578, and we're going to be going into a new chapter, the chapter on quadratic equations. On the right-hand side, I just put in a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And we're going to have to get familiar with the coefficients a, b, and c as we get later on into this chapter. But let's try number 25, and let's see if we can solve this for 0. I bet we remember back from our chapter 10 days, 6 days when we were factoring, we know that this turns out to be p minus 12 and p minus 4 turns out to be equal to 0. We're using that zero product property. Well, that tells us that p minus 12 is equal to 0, or p minus 4 is equal to 0. In either case, we end up with two solutions for p. P turns out to be a minus 12 or a plus 4. So those would be the solutions. I'm sorry, a plus 12. A plus 12 and a plus 4, those would be the solutions for number 25. We use our zero product property, set it to 0, and see what we can find out. Number 63 looks a little different, but we can quickly realize that we can factor out a y out of this quadratic equation. We can take a y, leaving me with a square root of 5 plus 1, and that's equal to 0. Well, this tells us that either y is equal, sorry, I made a mistake, so here's a 5y. If I factor out a y, I knew there was something not quite right. So this tells me that there are either y is equal to 0, or the square root of 5 times y plus 1 has to be equal to 0. Again, using my zero product property. So there's one of my answers, perhaps. The square root of y, the square root of 5 times y plus 1, let's subtract 1 from both sides. So that ends up being a negative 1. And we could divide both sides by the square root of 5, which would allow us to cancel these radicals. So this would look like y turns out to be negative 1 over the square root of 5. Again, we're using that zero product property, but we're going to have to rationalize the denominator too, because we don't want a rational in the denominator, so we multiply it by 1, or the square root of 5 over 5. In the denominator we have 5, and in the numerator we end up with just negative square root of 5. So there's our answer for number 63. We have either 0 or negative square root of 5 divided by 5. Thanks so much. We'll see you all tomorrow.